Hello everyone, and welcome to the Unlearning Talk series of the Start Create Cultural Change event. The Unlearning Talks is a series of talks on resilience and sustainability in the socio-cultural sector with a focus on Southeastern Europe. My name is Maria Luisa Laupodi. I am speaking to you from Thessaloniki in Greece, and I will be your host for this online event. This event is part of the START program, a program which is a capacity building and fellowship one for aspiring cultural managers from Greece. The program supports creative minds to kickstart their cultural initiatives that generate a positive social impact in their local communities. This year, the START program has supported, again, 30 cultural managers from Greece by offering a professional placement in 30 different sociocultural centers all over Germany. 15 of those cultural managers have moved forward with the program support. They have implemented their innovative initiatives in 9 cities around Greece until June 2020. I would like to take you through this journey with a short video we have prepared. The START program is coming to a conclusion this year, and while thinking how we would like to conclude it, we understood that a lot of the work that has been developed in the project could be relevant to other areas in our region, and similarly other projects could have a lot to share with our community. So we designed this series of talks to spread beyond Greece and Germany and in the Southeastern European space, as very often challenges remain the same when working towards sustainable cultural interventions. The Unlearning talks evolve around 3 thematic cycles. Cycle 1, coping with emerging crises, challenges and trends. Cycle 2, resilient models of sociocultural entrepreneurship. And cycle 3, building new collaborative methods of cooperation and networks. Each cycle spans over 3 days, from Tuesday to Thursday every week. And every day there is a different topic and a very rich lineup of speakers from Southeastern Europe. For more information, you can visit the startgreece.net website. And you as an audience can ask them any questions you wish by downloading the Slido app, either on Google Play or the App Store. The event code on Slido is #30422. So let me take you through the program. Today's talk is entitled Culture, Education and Engagement in the Era of Social Distancing. Confinement measures around the world and in the region of Southeastern Europe in particular have shown the importance of culture in order to connect, to learn and entertain. And those who could and had the emergency have rapidly developed new digital cultural products and educational materials and made them available online. During this talk, our speakers will reflect on the conditions of this transition from physical to digital and unlearned lessons they took, and will share their input of whether this crisis could lead to a transformative change. Before we go into more details, I would like to welcome our international sign language translator, Apostolis Margaritidis. For us, creating an online event offers the possibility to more people from different locations to access the content. And it is important for us that such events are also inclusive and welcoming to as many people as possible. I will now take you through today's program. We will start with the presentations of our 4 speakers and then continue to a Q&A. This part of the Q&A is participatory by design, as you, the audience, can join by sending us your questions and comments. And you will also, we will also have a guest speaker, which I will introduce to you later. But first, let me welcome the speakers of the second Unlearning talks. So welcome to Milena Berbenkova from Intercultura Consult in Bulgaria, Jennifer Tarr from the German Association of Socioculture in Germany, Maria Asteriou from the People Behind in Greece, and Valentina Socratus from Emerge in Greece. So let's start with the first speaker. Milena Berbenkova is an audience analysis and development specialist. And with experience in audience development for nonprofit performing arts organizations, as well as for cultural enterprises and museums, she has organized and managed diverse types of events in Bulgaria and abroad, and is experienced in festival production and grant writing. Milena, you can start your presentation.
Hello, thank you, Maria Luisa, for this introduction, and thank you for this opportunity. Just 1 second. I'm going to share with you just a couple of the more important and interesting developments in the cultural sector in Bulgaria in the past several months. Let's start with a short timeline. So at the beginning of March, it was clear that we should expect COVID-19 to reach Bulgaria. And one of the first measures that were introduced was the cancellation of cultural events. On March 8, the first cases were registered, and immediately all cultural events were cancelled. This was the case until the beginning of May, when the government decided to allow outdoor events with some measures, of course. And later in the month, indoor events, again, with decreased capacity and other measures. So right now we live in this situation, but there is an expectation that things will change again for the worse in the near months. But immediately after the measures were imposed, artists and organizations started to work towards adapting to the new situation. And this is truer for independent artists and smaller organizations than for national or government-backed institutions. We can speculate that this is because of the more apparent need for independent artists to keep working and keep their audiences engaged. So there are 2 trends that could be noticed immediately. Some organizations adapted their original content, for example, streaming theater plays, performances, or exhibitions, while others focused on creating new content. And there are good examples in all of these types of content, but I want to share with you just one example. And it is of new content that is a mix between interactive and content created specifically for online video use. This is the example of a small puppet theater organization. It is called Male Male and is based here in Sofia. It started a video series based on drawings sent to them by children and adults in the audience. Each week, the organization would set a topic and collect submissions by the audience, which in turn, it would make into short tales for children. In this way, they were able to engage with the audience and give them a key role in creating the new stories. But to do this, they had to use tools and skills which they don't usually employ in their work in live performances. And I think this is one of the key takeaways from the last few months. The need for skills and partnerships that can help artists and organizations to transcend to a new form of work. But the situation affected much more than just the form in which artists and cultural organizations work. An important aspect was, of course, financing these new functions, because I don't know how it is in Greece and Germany, but in Bulgaria, audiences are not used to paying for digital cultural content. So almost immediately, independent artists and organizations mobilized, they united and initiated conversations with the government. And it was mainly through their initiative that the government was able to respond quickly. For example, as a result of this, within months, and in some cases even within weeks, we got new funding opportunities, including the first grants that were opened specifically for art that is made for digital environment, and also structural grants for independent organizations. But what is next? Having art move online and the government backing it financially leaves one important question unanswered. What do the audiences need and what do they expect from cultural content online? If we're spending so much effort on adapting and creating new forms for digital and the government is focusing funding on these efforts, we need to know what are the best ways to do this and what the end result for the audience will be. So with Intercultura Consult, we are starting to work on a project focused exactly on this. It's focusing on the desired content by the audiences, on what is the attention span we as audiences can spend on art online, how do we engage with content, and what are we willing to pay for such experiences. And we're just starting work on this, so hopefully within the next several months, we'll be able to answer these questions. Thank you very much, and this is from me.
Thank you very much, Milena. The point about the audiences not being accustomed to paying digitally events is very interesting, and I would like to touch upon it later in the Q&A. Allow me now to present to you our next speaker, Jennifer Tarr. Jennifer Tarr has for many years worked as a cultural mediator and founded a participative Greek German youth theater group. Following her participation in the START program for 5 years, she's now leading the Neustart program for Corona-related investments in cultural institutions. And beginning this year, Jennifer represents the German Association of Socioculture on the board of the European Network of Cultural Centers. Jenny, welcome, and please start your presentation now.
Thank you very much, Maria Luisa, also a dear colleague, as you just mentioned. So after START, oddly enough, followed Neustart, although the two programs have nothing to do with each other, just starting. I'm still checking my presentation, and I hope it works. And in the meantime, I would also like to welcome everyone else on the panel. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and everyone watching. Hello and good evening from Berlin. So what is this Neustart program? So the Restart program. It is an immediate program for Corona-related investments in cultural institutions such as museums, exhibition halls, sorry, I'm skipping the slides, venues for concerts, dance, and theater performances, as well as social cultural centers and houses of culture. So in times of the Corona crisis, support is to be provided above all to small and medium-sized cultural institutions to ensure the accessibility of cultural institutions and their mediation services, and to re-enable their opening. Actually, right now I'm doing something that we always forbid our fellows to do, which is reading the slides, but this is actually guaranteeing you to give you the shortest overview over the program possible. So how does this Neustart program work? Through renovation and equipment measures in the cultural institutions, the further spread of the COVID-19 pandemic is to be reduced, and the conditions for the resumption of operations are to be created. To this end, the institutions are being supported in flanking their reopening with protective and precautionary measures, and in setting up and expanding new services such as digital formats. The special program supports investments by each institution between 10,000 and 5,000 euros. And who supports this very generous program? This is actually funded by the Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and the Media, which is like our cultural ministry. But as this works on a federal level, this is like the overall level. And it is carried out by the German Association of Social Culture, the Bundesverband Soziokultur. Following the official pandemic-related closures in 2020, the so-called BKM is providing one-time funding up to 30 million euros, which is quite an amount of euros, especially for the cultural sector. So basically, in this program, we have two main tasks, or let me be blunt, they are real challenges. It's actually checking 1,500 applications that reached us, which show the huge urgency and necessity of this all, and enable them to draw up a contract to get actually refunds for the investments that they are doing to reopen. And another thing is to spend 30 million euros until the end of this year. Might sound easier as it is indeed. And that means to administrate culture in times of COVID-19 according to the German federal financial regulations for funding, which is not that easy. But I have a lot of support by a really great team, showing you that it's definitely not me doing this program, but a lot of people, and also 6 additional people that are working decentralized all over Germany. Those people are working in Berlin. And I'm showing you this not only for the appreciation of those people, but also to show that the administrative work to really give a good support in these crises is really a huge amount of work, and we need a lot of capacities and rethinking. So since May, we are in contact with 1,500 people, and emails and phone calls vary from pure despair, anger, helplessness to heartfelt thankfulness that the government made such a huge amount of money available, although it still seems not enough. But looking to other countries, be it Greece, sometimes it really makes me feel almost ashamed of this wealth when it is not appreciated in an appropriate way. And this actually should result in a remarkable solidarity on a European level, by formats like this, for example, sharing expertise and forming a united voice to raise awareness and direction to the governments. What an important work culture does on the individual, the community, and also the transnational level. So based on the 1,500 application and the feedback from the teams, I can maybe give you a first intermediate impression, quite similar to the observations that Milena did. So most applicants try to convert their analog offers into the digital world. Sometimes these concepts are more, sometimes less creative, and I guess sometimes more and sometimes less successful. This needs to be evaluated at a later stage for sure. But one has to consider here that this conversion was done under a lot of pressure, so learnings and findings are not yet evaluated and adapted. And for this, for sure, we need a good practice exchange very urgently. So what cultural institutions try to work on in their offerings is also keeping up the participatory approach. This is really nice to see. It is not lost through this crisis. And also true innovation might be on its way. And you can see it is a real development in digitalization, but also mobilization, which I find very interesting. So they really try to bring the cultural offerings to the people, to put it on bikes, to put it in cars, whatever, and bring it to the people. But there is also one last thing that I would like to mention, and then I'm through with my short input, is that there is actually a huge chance on the level of advocacy and on the political level that can actually turn this time pressure that we are all facing into a leap of faith. And this, what I mean by this is that cultural funding policies can be changed right now, and they change already. And if cultural actors felt a lot of mistrust in the past when applying, and they had little freedom in developing their own projects, although they might be the experts in the field, now the urgency gives them the chance to prove that funding can be given out with much more freedom and trust, much faster and with less bureaucracy. So far, thank you very much.
Okay, Jenny, thank you. Before I move on, I just wanted to clarify the amount. You mentioned 10 to 5,000, but I saw in your slide that it was 10 to 50,000 euros, right?
10 to 50,000, that's correct.
10 to 50,
maybe it was just my
Okay.
I'm excited.
It makes a difference, 5 to 50.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to comment that by listening to the first two presentations, you shared both a lot about advocacy, as you just mentioned, and also some policy issues. So I think this is a very interesting, some interesting data. But I would like to move on to the other presentations and invite Maria Steriu to share some fieldwork challenges and introduce you to her and introduce her to you. So Maria is co-founder of the nonprofit organization People Behind, which aims to activate people of 65 plus years old through lifelong learning, digital education, volunteering, and intergenerational activities. So Maria, our virtual floor is yours.
Well, hello everyone. Hello, Maria Luisa. Thank you very much for this presentation. And it's a really pleasure for me to be here today among so great professionals of the field. As Maria Luisa said, I'm Maria Steriu. I'm the co-founder of the NGO People Behind. My background is on communication, social entrepreneurship, and theater. I took part in the START program in phases 1, 2, and 3. And it was actually my initial projects in terms of dealing with elderly people. We did an intergenerational performance with 50 elderly people and 15 younger. And another project which was based on social media education for 30 fantastic senior ladies. With my partner, Maria Iliopoulou, we founded People Behind in 2017 with the overall vision to create an equal society for all ages. As you said, Maria Luisa, we aim to achieve this through lifelong learning, digital education, intergenerational exchange, and volunteerism. In early 2020, we began a program named University for Third Age. This is actually an initiative that began in the 70s in Europe. Now it has been expanded to the whole world. And it offers a variety of courses for people 65 plus, no matter of their educational background. This can be either about technology or about culture or like more academic field like philosophy or history. COVID-19 hit us actually straight after we began in February. And it was a moment that we had to choose whether we would survive this or we would suspend our operations. Very fast, and with the support of some great volunteers, we turned everything online. We added 3 new courses. It was gymnastics, psychology, and ancient tragedy. And from the testimonials that we collected, we realized that it was the right thing to do, that all the participants said that it had been the only way for them to socialize and keep being active during lockdown. Many of them were quite emotional and in their testimonials and their videos. So for us, this was an additional motivation to continue to keep them active through online courses. Just a bit before COVID, like in January 2020, we had begun developing an e-learning platform for the University of Third Age with the support of Vodafone Foundation. So everyone would be able to participate no matter their location. You understand probably that this was the smartest decision we had ever taken, since after 1 month, COVID came in Greece, and after a few days or about a month, we had the lockdown. So now this year, this e-learning platform is almost ready, and this year's courses for the university will run only from this platform. We begin in early October, like in 2-3 weeks, with courses of digital education, philosophy, and English, with the support of TIMA Charitable Foundation. I would like actually from this whole experience to mention 2 points that for me are quite important. The first one is that for us, COVID-19 was a great opportunity to become faster, the organization that we wanted to be, like more tech-oriented, much more flexible, and be able to apply to many more beneficiaries than than only the people who live in Athens. On the other hand, I want to highlight the fact that technology is not yet as democratic as it should be. I mean that the majority of people 65 plus do not have internet access. They are digitally illiterate. So when everything is turning digital, like not only on us, like not only for the University of Third Age, but also for the whole Greek society, for example, gov.gr. Some people are automatically excluded, and this is not the society we want to live in. So we do our best, but from my experience, we are actually alone in this. There is not proper support from the municipalities, not proper support from the government. And this is the next challenge we need to take, like to make them our allies in order to make a world more democratic and more equal for all ages. That's all from me now, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, for sharing these two very practical points. Actually, maybe later in the Q&A, I would like to touch upon the issue of educating elderly people for technology, through technology, and how this is like a really interesting issue or area, how can I say. The next presentation is by Valentina Socratus. She lives in Alexandroupolis and is a cultural manager, museum educator, and facilitator. She works at the Ethnological Museum of Thrace. Her studies in education and non-formal learning, her fellowship in START, as well as her philosophy for lifelong learning, gave her the necessary tools to create methods specifically tailored to each context and theme. And she will tell us more about her latest work, her project. Valentina, welcome. I believe the audience is waiting to hear you.
Good evening, everyone, and greetings from Alexandroupoli in Greece. I'm Valentina Socratus, and I'm the creator of Emerge. With the support of Start Create Cultural Change, I was able to implement my project Emerge in Alexandroupolis from January to June of 2020. My project aim was to showcase the importance of mental health by everyday life people dealing with everyday life challenges through the arts. So a core team of 10 adults was created after an open call. One of the fundamental elements for my project success was the commitment of the core team throughout the duration of the project. It was made clear to them that they are here as an action team, working together, creating something for our local community. And of course, how interconnected each workshop was, so participation was mandatory. The project was doing great, beyond my expectations. I could see the bond and trust built, the sense of ownership and commitment getting stronger with each meeting. I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then this. Something no one could have ever predicted, and the game changed, and really fast. So what now? You still need your team's engagement, commitment, and ownership to continue, or else what's the true point of continue doing this? So you stop, you take a minute, and you try to think about which is the most important need that the team has right this second. You need to ask the questions. Is this still something you can be a part of? Can you work under these circumstances? What do you need? Are you still committed? Your team needs to know that the plan is still here. We keep our commitment. Every week, same time, but just in a different place. You include your core team in the process of finding a solution, and you use the most familiar digital tool to them, like communication platforms, social media, and sometimes like a phone call. And you present to them the alternatives, maybe a virtual museum or short documentary videos. You become more flexible and you rethink your own expectations. And whatever you do, you keep the communication, even if it's only just to share your news, your worries, and frustrations. You have to keep being their safe space. That was the most important thing to keep in my mind. But is there such a thing as a digital hug? Can we use only this tool and keep our emotional connection and our team dynamics in a virtual environment? Can we really see each other behind a screen? So did it work? Well, yes and no. What I found out was that the level of bonding and sharing was partially lost by some of the members. Individually, they still believed in the project, but between them, they felt really disconnected. One of my team members stopped altogether during our digital period because of the platform we used and did not seem interested to learn how to use it. but still created an art project. In the first 3 digital sessions, everyone kept the same ethos of being on time and participating. Then, not so much. It was made clear that it was not of the same importance if I lose one online meeting than one in-person meeting. So individually, they still kept working on their art pieces and communicated directly with me for feedback, materials, and so on. As an end result, the museum's narrative was cohesive, and that was because of the initial work we have done. Some of the art pieces changed the concept due to the protective guidelines, but our initial concept was now reality. The sense of accomplishment was there, but the sense of ownership was not the same for the whole team. They worked to create the pop-up, but needed time to reconnect with each other, to once again be moved by one another with the same passion that they created the art and cultural events for their communities. In other words, if it wasn't for the initial work that was done, I don't know how successful my approach would have been in this specific context. So I ask again, is a digital hug a real thing? But what's next? We're not going to stop here. In the times of uncertainty we live, we still believe in the power of a message, so adapting to our new circumstances is a natural step forward. So we thought to create a cultural product that can reach people without losing our identity. We are just changing how we're going to transmit our message and grow our reach at the same time. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my experiences on the field. Back to you, Maria Luisa.
Thank you very much, Valentina. It has been really nice to see how you developed and adapted, and obviously I'm sure that the audience will have some questions as well. Moving forward to the questions now. I would like, of course, to thank all our speakers for their input. We have heard quite a lot of interesting points. And let me remind you that you can participate as an audience in the conversation by sharing your question or comments through the Slido app. You can download the app either through the Google Play or through the App Store. And the event code is 30422. You can also participate through the Facebook live stream. So I think that just starting with a few common points we've heard maybe through the all presentations is how to include everyone in this process. So Milena, you mentioned that you're going to ask the audience, you know, what would they like to see. Maria, you mentioned you know, how can the people, your beneficiaries, be trained in digital tools for accessing all the material you can offer and the seminars. And Valentina, you also mentioned the aspect of you know, willingness to participate in new through new media. And I would like to start maybe with you, Jenny, because this is a kind of different work with sharing the funding for infrastructures in Germany. And I was wondering if this if the administrative actually burden, the administrative load that you have described to us as a challenge, is this a capacity that was a prerequisite, and how the government, which is funding, as you've informed us, this emergency action, how did it select the association, the German Association of Socioculture? So capacity versus, you know, skills and selection for this?
Well, I think first of all, we have to be very clear that to give out money that are actually taxes, right, that we are spending. So we need to be very careful with those, because right now everyone is, of course, willing to spend money, but what happens in 5 years, and politics are asking, how did you spend money during the Corona crisis? So we need to be careful for this. And actually there are no capacities in any association to do such a work. Everything had to be, you know, designed from scratch. You need a whole call center. We needed a new digital digital platform to deal with this, but talking also a lot about resilience, and specifically, in this series of the Unlearning talks, I think that now we build up quite knowledge and infrastructure that stays and can react to those kind of things going back and forth much quicker. And the social cultural sector specifically, it's also an example in Greece, is rather underrepresented. If you compare it to, museums, theaters, they have a lobby. Social culture is there since the 70s, maybe even earlier. But it needed to develop, and right now you can see that the participatory approach and the power of democratization and also the democracy that Maria Asterio was mentioning when it comes to digitalization. Social culture has a huge potential, and I think the government is realizing this every year a bit further. So talking from the association's point of view, which might be a more lobbyistic point of view, if I may, this gives us a huge opportunity to again, have a spotlight on what social culture can actually do.
Okay, so just to be clear on this, you say that you've set up everything from scratch, but I assume that the government had the choice to give this fund to be managed to different organizations. So the other question is, why did it pick you as an association?
Because we said we can do it.
Okay.
There has to be a certain flexibility, and cultural management, that we have, very short-term contracts. People in the cultural field, would not go into such a project and work here if they are on a, lifelong contract in some company or whatever. So I think we also needed to say, well, we have 600 members in the association. There is a huge benefit for our social cultural center, so it does make sense as a lobbyistic association. But we're not only thinking in that way because we are funding in museums and theaters. We can do so because we can build up structures. Sometimes it feels like a bubble gum. We can, we can blow it up and then, shrink it. It's the flexibility that social culture, I think, always had.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. Talking about flexibility, I would like to ask Valentina, you mentioned that the next step, if I got it right, is to go totally digital. So we saw a podcast and some other actions. So my question would be, if it is actually that flexible to go only digital?
Well, we're going to go end digital.
Okay. Please tell us.
It was made really obvious that with the methods that Image uses, which is 100% experiential and participatory, and our fundamentals were the human connection in order to create a different kind of active citizens, was not 100% successful by digital means. And that's why I asked the question, is a digital hug a real hug? So for us right now, the answer is not really. So we have to adapt because we still believe in our message, and we still believe that we have to keep the conversation going in matters of well-being and mental health. So we adapt and we try to create something new that is more flexible. It's only digital and at the same time has very low cost. So for us, that was very important. What can we do with practically not a big budget right now, but to still have an active presence and to reach new audience and to give platform again to new people? Because through our podcast that we are trying now to develop, is like we can invite you, Maria Luisa, or Jennifer, or Milena, or anyone from all over the world, and to have various points of views about their experience, their knowledge, even if you're an expert or not. So we're trying to keep moving, actually, according to the very uncertain circumstances that we have right now.
So just to go back to this point about being inclusive, so you will try to focus on including other communities, but maybe those who don't have the skills for digital, you will create also something physical?
Oh, yes. At the same time, what our experience was, what my experience was during the confinement was that I started to enjoy again my long walks outside. So I was thinking about how can I give a positive message to the city by a funky new way that we thought in our core team. It was like to create small QR code stickers with positive messages, and then to spread them along the city and to spread a little joy in this way. But at the same time, because we can still work in small groups of people, we can still produce like art videos and again, thematic art videos with our message and broadcast them to continue to keep the art element of our initiative that is very, very important to us.
Okay, thanks. I think it's quite interesting to see what are the actions, and maybe we kind of all experiment in the beginning with this shift from digital to physical and back to, you know, and the story goes on. So I was wondering, going between in this physical and digital, Maria, you mentioned your, sorry, yes, my notes, that you are going to have this e-learning platform now very soon. It's being developed as we speak. And I was wondering, how are you going to deal, my question is pretty similar as with Valentina, how are you going to deal with the accessibility issue? So if, you know, some of the elderly people do not know how to access Zoom calls and, you know, webinars, how are they going to have access to your material?
Well, they're not.
Okay.
It's pretty obvious, actually, and it's sad to say, but we are not, I mean, we are a very small team, and we are not in the position to provide access or to provide devices or to provide, I don't know, hard copy notes for everyone. I mean, even if you provide hard copy to somebody who doesn't know anything, he will not be able to attend the course. So unfortunately for this year, we are enrolling only people who have some kind of access. I mean, we don't need like high-tech people. We just need somebody who has a device, a cell phone, a mobile tablet, or a laptop, and can somehow open their email. That's all. But unfortunately, and that's why I said before that technology is not as democratic as it should be, because it shouldn't be us to try to give access to those people. It should be like the government or somebody like that has more power and of course more resources, financial and other resources.
Mm-hmm. I really wonder if you know, we're going to be able to find a way to introduce those communities, because I'm sure it's not only the elderly people that lack some skills. There are all sorts of communities. So this is a challenge, and that leads me to the topic of the content that Milena, you mentioned in your presentation in your new project. And I would like to ask you to give us a little more information into what kind of maybe, you know, activities you're going to do in the project to get feedback on the kind of content that the audience wants to see, and also for which kind of content, if I got it right, they're willing to pay, right?
Exactly. So yes, the project that is just starting now, it's very important to say it is administered by us, by Intercultural Consult, but we are working on it in partnership with several arts organizations and cultural organizations. And it was very important for us to have this diverse group of partners so we can test with them their different approaches that they have already probably tried or are looking forward to experimenting with. So we are working with people who are in the performing arts, with people who are in the alternative tourism sector, and with musicians and one more group that right now I can't remember. I'm sorry about that. But the idea is that we are combining these several different perspectives on the one side, working with the artistic and cultural sector. And on the other side, we have other audiences and potential audiences. So these are people who also have different interests. And what we're going to do with them is, on one side, we're going to work with the artists and creators to see what is the content they already have, how are they using it, what are the results they've had with it. For example, a couple of them have made these experiments, one of which I shared in my presentation, with the tales for children made with their own drawings. So we're going to look at the results of this experiment, and then we're going to talk with actual people from the audience, mainly families with children, not the actual children, and to see how they accept this content. And it's very important to say, during the times of confinement, so to say, there was kind of an overload of cultural content online. And many of it was coming from very experienced organizations, which are not even Bulgarian. Like, let's talk about Western organizations like Met Opera or the National Theatre of Britain. And they were sharing this content for free. And this was creating this uncertainty in independent artists of their inability to actually provide such high quality and to ask for payment while they actually need it. So there was this, how can I say, dissimilarity between the two groups that also led to the fact that audiences didn't pay for art for the most part. So we're going to look into how this is informing their future decisions onto paying for art. Are they willing to, yes, to do that?
Okay, yeah, I think it's very interesting to see how this research and testing goes, because indeed we have seen it everywhere. Also in Greece, for example, we have seen big cultural institutions webcasting shows from other foreign big cultural institutions. And that was, I guess, interesting and also not interesting, depending on which point of view one can look at it from our cultural field. So after this first Q&A round, I would like to share with you another story from a guest speaker. So for our audience, if you also want to share your story, you can register through our website and our team will contact you. So I would like to invite, sorry, let me just make sure, Maria Leonida, I would like to welcome you, to make sure I have your name right, on our virtual stage, and ask you to maybe tell us a few things about your work and also share your story. Please.
Thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to join the group. I'm a documentary filmmaker. For the last 15 years, I'm involved in film education and media literacy work. So I design and deliver and organize activities and projects with and inside and outside schools, working with educators, teachers, and all kinds of youth workers and trainers. My expertise in to show how image and sound can be used as tools for communication and expression. So the story I wanted to share with you was related to the development of a real project that was happening in one of the schools we worked last winter, which suddenly had to be interrupted, like also many activities had last March. The truth is that what happened is that in the beginning, everybody felt that, of course, things would stop. the interesting thing in terms of sharing a story and learning lessons is that what was the point that both sides of the project realized that there could be a continuation? Because at the beginning we didn't think of it. So at what point do you decide to try to be more flexible? This is one issue. And as usually adults are more conscious and young people just would follow, but then would lead their own way. The other issue is how to engage young people in something they would not really start by themselves because they find other ways to spend their time. So the project was, of course, a filmmaking project, a documentary about diversity issues in their school, because this is a mixed population school in the outskirts of Athens. So I had to re-engage the teachers first, and the teachers should re-engage the group because I depend on them as mediators. And then the thing is how to organize this group, because usually when you work in the classroom, you have 20 teenagers, but in Zoom, it doesn't really work with 20 people to produce collective work. So all these choices of going from the big group to smaller groups, how to divide them, what is the role of the secondary adult in a Zoom communication. And the other interesting lesson we learned was what is the connection of the different digital platforms. For example, we were working by using Viber and Zoom as two different connecting points, because Viber is 24 hours a day, and you have just these short chats or coordinating chats. And Zoom is a more of a discussion, or at least you think you're there with Zoom. With Viber, you just exchange all the time little things. So I found this also very interesting, which I've never thought of it before. And there's also one interesting issue that the young people brought it, because for them, mobile phones, of course, and social media is much more in their life. And sometimes we were using both Zoom and Viber at the same time and sending and uploading, and down. Things were happening in parallel because for them it doesn't matter. So they would send something to someone else to show it in a better quality because they didn't have a good phone that day or something. And things were happening all the time in front of a sharing screen. I found that this dynamic can teach us a lot of lessons. And however, to conclude and not tire you so much, the truth is that at the end of the corona, I did a sort of non-legal visit to the school, and I made the proper shooting. So but this is unofficial to admit, because we had collected a lot of material from the Zooms. They were sending me files through Viber and mails, but then there was something missing. And that's where I would like to make a point about the connection of digital and physical, that the truth is that digital is wonderful, but it's not 100%. So there was an issue of physical that we had to combine. So the final documentary we made, which is like 10 minutes long, is a combination of all these materials. And probably this is, for me, this is the aim, to be able to combine. And I call it a collective participatory documentary because it does reflect a broad collaboration. And just to connect my story with maybe one of the others, I think one of the solutions in all this is peer learning. Also for Maria Steriou, who was wondering how, and for everybody who wonders, how can we help other people be more, have the skills to turn on their tablet or laptop or something? I mean, peer learning and neighbor learning for me is a solution because it's the only solution. Some neighbors can meet even during Corona. And I had to show my aunts everything about tablets and computers during Corona. So I was like a tutor for elderly people, but this worked. I mean, I had to spend an hour, but they started learning. And we have to use ourselves as teachers. Organizations might not be able to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Jenny, I saw you want to share something because I have another question afterwards. Yes.
Yeah, just to really strengthen what Maria just said about Maria, this is something that I also wanted to stress, because you said, Maria Steriou, that the government should take responsibility. Yes, in terms of making funding easily accessible. Yes, but the knowledge is what people like you have. And this is, I think, a very, very good chance now to offer them what you actually can do. Because they don't have the knowledge. They have to steer the above, and they must not have even. So it is really the time to exchange practices, to unite, and to offer them what the experiences that you have, because you are the experts.
Thank you, Jenny. Indeed, I think your input, Maria, was interesting also in terms of what Valentina Socratus presented to us and mentioned, that we are going to try to cover the digital part, but also keep in mind that a digital hug is not the same as a physical hug.
Yes.
It comes down to peer learning and and sharing, generally speaking. So before you go, is there something, Maria, you would like maybe to ask, or to one of the speakers, or?
I did have a question to Milena again. I'm sorry, I'm coming back to that, because she mentioned the issue of the abundance of digital content, and the question is, how can we balance digital and analog, and investigate what the audience wants, or what the audience can handle, because we are also audience, everybody. I must say that the broader public never paid for art. I'm sorry, Milena. Those who are older know that art was for specific groups of people, and it will always be. There are different parts of art or artifacts that the broader public shares and enjoys, but we cannot expect suddenly my mother to buy an expensive painting or buy expensive digital content, because if she never did this, right? So there will be these imbalances, but we will just adjust and maybe share more, and maybe we can think of cultivating the feeling about art in this more democratic way.
Milena,
all these line streaming of
Milena, maybe you would like to, thank you, Maria, very much for this question. So I would like to ask you, Milena, to maybe comment on this.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. Of course, the wider public, especially in Europe, has mainly been an audience in a different way to art, and there's this expectation between and the difference between the higher classes and let's say the middle and lower classes, and the expectation that the government is paying for a lot of the art that we've had access to, but what I'm talking about mainly is smaller independent arts organizations that are not government supported for the most part, unless it is a project-based support, which is never structural support. As I said previously, this is the first time we see structural support for independent artists. So these are people who depend on their audience to actually contribute in some way. And usually they're not expensive. So there is this expectation. But on the other hand, in the digital environment, we are used to being able to go to, let's say, YouTube and watch almost anything we want. Do we want music? Do we want comedy? Do we want to see ballet? You can see all of, some of the performances of Bolshoi theater, let's say, on YouTube. So it's easier to get used to this idea that digital means free, which is also connecting to the wider idea of the freedom of the internet and how everything is supposed to be super accessible. But now we have to bring it back a little bit and remind people that artists are real people who also need to survive and to live a normal life, not to just, provide this entertainment, let's call it, for the wider public. Because we all have a role in this society and we have to share our piece in it.
Thank you, Milena, and thank you very much, Maria Leonida, for joining us and for sharing your story. I would like to continue with some questions because I can see already in the Slido app we have some questions from the audience. So I would like to ask Jenny. I have a question for Jenny about the goals in the strategy and whether they were developed in of the program, so of the Neustart program, were the goals and the strategy developed with participatory methods with the cultural community, or were they decided centrally by the government? So can you hear us? Maybe I would like to, I will move on to another question. So to Milena, there's a question, and it is about your project and this kind of research you do. So the question is, do you design any follow-up researches on the same object? And is there going to be more in-depth follow-up on surveys? So obviously, we don't know exactly what kind of tools you're going to use. So maybe you can tell us about that and maybe...
Yes. Yes, I realized I didn't specify enough. So, okay, so the research will be in a couple of phases. The first phase is seeing what are the results from a content that was already made before we even decided to make the research. So we are doing something like a preliminary research on already available content where we can see how many people saw it, how long they were watching it, all these things that are now considered a given with social media. After that, we're going to do focus groups and surveys with audience members. The focus groups will be specific for each type of, I mean, type is a little bit a weird word, but let's call it type of art for each sphere of art. So for performance arts, for music, for audiovisual arts. And then after that, we're going to create to create with our partners content that we believe is answering what was input through the surveys and through the focus groups, and then experiment with this content, what the results will be. So we're trying to make a full circle. Of course, there's always something that happens in such research projects that might alter the approach or the results that we expect, but that's part of the process, and we hope to be able to give something very beneficial at the end of it.
Thank you, Milena. I think it's really interesting that you have varied tools. And I was wondering, I'm not sure whether you mentioned this, if you mentioned partners, you have various partners in this project. And if you already have any association or union of cultural or art professionals in Bulgaria that can act as a mediator for you collecting and disseminating these tools.
So right now there isn't. Actually, they're just starting to be conversations among independent artists to create such a union. While everybody's very united, there are a lot of questions as to how they should approach this, as there are differences in the needs of the different sectors and differences in what they can offer. So they're still trying to figure out what this would look like.
Mm-hmm. Milena, I think we had a sound issue for the last sentence, just to check.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes, I do. Okay. So can you please repeat the last part? You mentioned that, you know, there are efforts and so on, and?
Yes, there are efforts. There are efforts. There's many different problems that each sphere has, so they're trying to figure out how to balance those. Okay. And the other thing is that if this organization happens, it is really starting from the bottom up. It's not starting from the top. Nobody from the government has been offering such a thing to happen. It is really so almost like guerrilla organization in a way.
Okay, I think that leads me also to the points that Maria Steriu mentioned about the lack of government support. But in this case, I also wanted to make a little request on behalf of our Greek community that maybe we should be able to collaborate, because situations between Bulgaria and Greece in this respect are quite similar sometimes. We in Thessaloniki, a group, or quite big group of cultural professionals, we have started during the COVID period to get together in order to advocate for culture, and that started from Thessaloniki. There are other efforts from Athens and nationwide, so this is a learning curve for us. And we've been also discussing this with partners such as Jenny from the German Association and others. So I think we should keep track of these efforts and who could be mutually beneficial. And now, before I forget this, I wanted to ask Maria Asteriou about your next steps in this period. So you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, that you will launch the e-learning platform and you will also test it, I guess. So, I mean, I got kind of the inspiration from the testing of the content that Milena mentioned with various tools in the research to ask you, kind of the same. So have you seen any particular preference for this age group or other age groups on the kind of tools they prefer, or which are easier to handle? Because I think just to give a little context, what our guest speaker, Maria Leonida, mentioned is that you follow on various tools and then you decide which is the best combination.
Well, yes, this is true, Maria Luisa. Before replying to this, I would like to say something for what Jennifer and Maria Leonida said before, because probably I was not very clear. I didn't mean that the government should educate people. I meant that the government should support the organizations that want to do this, but also that the government also are the municipalities. Municipalities have the very famous for Greece Kapi, which are great spaces, now empty spaces because the elderly people are not supposed to go there. And they're very big and nice spaces with Wi-Fi where the people who work there could probably do some kind of this educating, because we are just a team of 5 people. And of course, you understand that we are not very able to educate all the elderly people of Greece. However, we did use the phone education during COVID. It worked for like 5-6 people, but you understand probably that 5-6 people is not actually the impact that we want to have. Now to say something about the tools that they prefer. Well, from my experience, I think that they actually kind of love Facebook and they love Viber. And I think it's Facebook because they can write things and they can read a lot of things from their friends and try to search for all the friends from school or relatives or their children or grandchildren. Again, there are many problems, like for example, English language, like things that for us are very, very easy, for them seem really, really difficult. Like for example, why should we write .com or .gr? This is a whole kind of logic of a way of thinking that they need to be educated. And this is the difficult part in really trying to put this thing in their mind, like to turn their way of thinking from offline to online. What we did with the platform, we are having now some tests with them while developing the platform in order for the platform to be as accessible for them as possible. We try to do it actually pretty simple. It's not simple, but we're trying to do it like just to press a click and, just 1 or 2 steps at a time. but still it's a work in progress, because also when we will start with the courses, we will then go back and have feedback on how they can understand the material and the stuff, and then the live courses, because we will have also live courses, for example, through Zoom. It's a whole procedure, but it's quite interesting. And I just wanted to mention, because I had that in mind before and I forgot to say, when I'm saying internet access, I don't only mean devices or like if somebody knows how to use the device. I've read a report the other day. It's not like from the it's not very recent, but it's like 4 or 5 years ago. And it said like that half of the households of Greece don't have Wi-Fi. So if half of the households in Greece don't have Wi-Fi, just imagine what happens with elderly people. So when we're talking about internet access, it doesn't only mean education or just buying a device. It goes back to the telecompanies, etc., etc., and it's a very long story.
Indeed, Maria, I mean, we seldom forget the kind of prerequisites that the new digital era requires from us. And I see all of you nodding your heads, because it is totally true. And we are facing this with simple things, and we're used to it, but at the same time, it's not obvious. There's one point that through all your comments, I wanted to take back, and it is about the well-being, and about not only the well-being of professionals in the cultural sector, of educators, and well-being of the audience, because what we've realized also through the program and speaking with other professionals is that this period has, at European level, elevated the issue of well-being. And I've heard all of you almost mention the phone calls or the emails that you've been receiving as project leads or leaders of organizations, responding to different kinds of sentimental reactions. And I would like to take this to Valentina, actually, as a question, and ask you, you mentioned that one of the takeaways from your project is that we need, as humans, time to reconnect. So if we're talking about internet connection and the time to reconnect, there's a kind of, there is something in there. And I wanted you to maybe elaborate on this for our audience, because I believe from what you presented that you've seen this build up, the time needs or the space needs between your project team.
Well, for us, it was, like I said in the beginning, when one of your core needs for this to work is to create a team that is bonded and that they created a safe space of trust. And for that to continue, you need to keep working on that, because you need time for that. So when the confinement era broke, we were actually just finishing the period of time that we had to work on our bonding and sharing and connecting. But then we needed that to give us the boost to keep on working, to create our space, our arts, and to create a room for us to share it with our local community. But then we couldn't interact, and we couldn't co-create our pieces. And for my team, it was very important, because there were none of them were artists. I don't know if I said that, but they were everyday life people with no prior experience in how to create an art piece. So there was the sense of we needed the reassurance of feedback, of exchanging opinions, and I used that color and you can do it this way, and oh, what a nice idea, can we work this on together? Then through Zoom we took the art pieces and showed them in front of the camera, but it's not the same. So it was very weird when we started to, when confinement was done, and then we went to the actual space that we had to create the museum. For me, I think if I had more time to work with the team, I would postpone the opening of the museum and continue for at least 4 or 5 more sessions to bring again that sense of connectivity that there was to the team. Because no matter your project, as individuals, you needed time to mentally process that there's a pandemic and I was closed and now I am back here, but I didn't stop working, but is it the same still? So in other words, we are still in a learning curve. We are still trying to find the ideal balance of how to manage both. And it's a work on it's a process.
Yes, it is. Thank you for sharing this. It's really important that we mention these issues, because I think, Jennifer, you mentioned also in your presentation about the way the funding, the governmental funding, is being given and requests to be processed, and these has huge limitations sometimes in terms of time management, and this is an issue. And I think people who, all of us should convey these needs to funders and collaborators. So before we had a technical issue, so I would like to get back to you, Jenny, and ask you the question again from our audience, from the Slido. So the question was, the goals in the strategy were developed, whether the goals in the strategy were developed with participatory methods with the cultural community, or whether they were decided centrally by the government. So to what kind of institutions would the structural funding be given?
Yeah, that's a very interesting, excellent question. I try to keep myself short because there has been a lot of discussions, almost fights about it. So, the immediate program, it was an emergency thing. It has been set up in a very, very quick amount of time. And I think the government and not the associations identify 2 needs. And this is like the push in terms of digitalization, and that there needs to be restructurings in the buildings itself. So this is what they gave us, and this is what we did. And everyone, at least, and of course hygiene measurements. Like they could apply for disinfection, for face masks, for this plexiglass kind of thing. So like the really, really basic things. And then there is another program, which is oddly enough called Neustadt Kultur, and it is a billion amount of money that will be pushed into the pipes of culture, which is excellent. But here they actually gathered a lot of association, lobbyistic associations, communities, and gathered the knowledge throughout the immediate program. We gave a lot of feedback, so the program has been redesigned, and especially the administration is a lot easier, a lot less bureaucracy, the money can be given out much, much quicker. So there is improvement, and also the government sees that there needs to be a revolution in funding law. And now's the time to really, give the feedback and the input, to give, the trust to the people that actually do culture, and they know best what they need. And not to say, now we're doing refugee projects, you can only apply to refugee projects, so all the cultural institutions do refugee projects, although maybe the need in that community is not there. I think there is a way to more flexibility, but our voices from the other side need to be really loud for this.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm very happy that this, listening to you saying how this new program is based on feedback from the professional communities is something that one can dream, basically. But on the other side, it requires from us as professionals to be more mature in this process. And this is why I was saying before to Milena, how we need to exchange this experience to mature our processes as communities of practice, and to be able to give out a voice. Because Milena, I think you also mentioned something about different groups and so on. So before we conclude this, this very interesting session, I think we could talk for hours about this because your experiences are so interesting. I would like to just go back to our theme, today's theme, which is cultural education and engagement in the era of social distancing, and maybe ask each one of you as speakers to give us a kind of perspective for your community, your country, maybe. What are you, what is a priority in order to move on working? Because it's not easy to prioritize. The needs are so varied. We had the same discussion yesterday from another point of view. But if we had a chance to speak out loud, as Jenny said, what would be your at least one? Maybe you have more priorities to share with people at policy level. And I would like to start with Maria Asteriou, and then move on to the other speakers. Maria.
Well, while you were asking this, the first thing that came up to my mind, as always, is financing. However, I will not stay in this. I would say that, and probably continuing a bit what we said before about policies and how people are excluded. One factor, one reason that things are not really working in terms of digital education, I think, is that educators are not properly educated. And what I mean by this is that I have experienced, and I am also one of these people, that I have learned how to teach elderly people, who is actually kind of not the majority right now, but it will be the majority very soon in Greece of people. I have been educated to educate them just by experience. There is not like a proper education for us on how to teach these people. So this is not very good for time, and not very good for other resources like money, like the team. And I think if like somebody would put us this knowledge very fast and very, very easily before like we start actually teaching the people, that would save resources, and we would be much better professionals.
Thank you, Maria. Valentina, your priority?
Okay. Well, my priority, trust. To quote Jennifer, trust in giving the time and the space and the means to the cultural sector to do its job, to inspire, to change, to educate. And at the same time, I would like to be part of a movement of being more actively moving in a digital way, in showing how important our well-being is and our mental health. And if our tools are digital, how can we shift the use of those tools in order to promote that one by one, in groups, by the government, by organizations, by individuals. So just those little things.
Okay, two priorities for you. Jenny, I'm giving the floor to you based on trust.
Yeah, based on trust. Well, actually, I would like to quote you now, Maria Luisa, because you said we have to mature, and I think this goes also back to the START program, the professionalization and also the self-esteem and the cultural sector. What an expertise that is, and how to sell this, and how really to communicate the benefits of the work that all of us are doing and what we can really achieve to the municipalities, to the government, is something that we still need to, get better. We need to professionalize, to network. This is maybe, more important than ever. And another little thing, it's more like a psychology thing, but it also fits very well onto this panel, I think. I think we need to let go of this idea that digital can replace, you know, all the life activities, the experience together. I mean, this is what especially the performative arts are all about. Like me and the, you know, the exponent at a museum, you know, this is this change that we should not try to replace through digital means. So rather get over it, it will not be replaced, and, you know, enjoy the freedom of, you know, play and think out of the box with digital means, but never try to replace it and be disappointed all the time because it's not working.
Which is about expectations, and I think it's a brilliant point, because I think that's what happened with all of us. We had a shock, and then we had so many expectations about the future, and now we're kind of dealing with this. And thank you, Jenny. And last but not least, the priorities for you, Milena, in the coming time.
Well, for me, it's a little bit, maybe a little bit of a professional kink, but it's listen to the people who receive your message, because they have their own way of understanding what's happening, and they also have their own needs. So this means both for governments and for artists and for organizations. Listen back to the people who you're providing with your message, because they also have something to say, and they're the ones that provide you with your work, with the space for your work. But I also want, I think what Jennifer said very well connects to something one of the speakers in the first talks, I think, said that digital shouldn't be thought as this replacement, but rethink the whole concept of connection and of engagement through it. So maybe it's a need that we don't even know we have yet, that it can address.
Maybe it's an unlearned need, so we're going to try and learn it now. So I'd like to thank you once more for participating and contributing to this talk. Thank you again, all speakers. And of course, it has been a pleasure, as I said, having you on our virtual stage. And I hope this conversation has been inspiring for you. I mean, it's definitely been for me, and I'm sure for the audience. We've received quite a few questions. And of course, I would like to thank the production team behind the online event, because they're also, we as a team are also adapting to the new reality. And of course, dear viewers, you know, an audience, thank you for being with us in today's event. See you all in our next session tomorrow, Thursday, September 17th at 18 hours European Eastern Time, with the third talk on putting people first, the new stresses of sociocultural practice in a post-pandemic world. With this third talk, we conclude the first cycle, and starting next week on Tuesday, we move on to the second cycle. So if what you heard today sounds interesting, I invite you to share your story like Maria has done by registering at our events page at startgreece.net. And until then, I wish you to stay safe and join us on social media. Thank you.
you.